The core of the predictability trap lies in the mistaken belief that being ever present equals being ever valued. Most men think that by constantly texting, checking in, and being a visible fixture in a woman's daily life, they are building a foundation of reliability and interest. In reality, they are accidentally stripping away the very tension that drives attraction. When your presence becomes guaranteed, you shift from being a source of excitement to a source of routine. You become the safe option, the person she knows will always be there to validate her, and as a result, her brain stops working to win your attention. This comfort is the death of chemistry. She no longer has to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, or how you feel, because you've already provided all the answers. By being constantly available, you essentially become a solved puzzle. Human psychology is wired to seek out and focus on the unknown, the uncertain, and the challenging. Think of it like a game. Once you've mastered every level and seen every secret, you stop playing and move on to something new. When you provide total emotional closure by always being the first to reach out or the one who stays on the phone for hours, you satisfy her curiosity completely. There are no emotional gaps for her to fill with her own thoughts. To stay on her mind during those late-night hours when she's alone, you must stop being a constant utility. You have to create enough space so that her mind has a reason to wander back to you, wondering why the puzzle isn't as simple as she originally thought. The power of the cliffhanger is rooted in a psychological phenomenon known as the Zeigarnik effect, which states that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones. When you binge watch a hit series until 3 a.m., it's rarely because you are satisfied with the story. It's because the episode ended right before the big reveal, leaving your brain in a state of high tension. Most men make the mistake of being so over-available that they give away the entire season finale in the first week. They explain every feeling, answer every question instantly, and stay in the conversation until there's nothing left to say. By doing this, you provide total emotional resolution. Once the story feels finished, the brain naturally moves on to the next thing. You've removed the mystery, and without mystery, there is no reason for her to keep tuning in to see what happens next. To be truly unforgettable, you must shift your focus from seeking emotional satisfaction to maintaining emotional momentum. Attraction isn't built when you are talking. It is built in the spaces between the conversations when she is left wondering about you. If she knows exactly where you stand and can predict your every move, her brain effectively solves you and stops putting in the effort to figure you out. To prevent this, you have to become the one who occasionally cuts the scene while the energy is still high. By being the one to end the text thread or the phone call while you're both still laughing, you leave her with an open loop in her mind. She is left with a positive, lingering feeling and a subconscious drive to reconnect just to get that sense of completion. You aren't being cold. You are simply making sure the credits roll while she's still leaning in, eager for the next episode. Understanding strategic absence requires a clear distinction between high-value behavior and manipulative games. Many men confuse the two, but the difference lies in your intent and your reality. Childish ghosting is about ignoring someone to make them feel insecure. Strategic absence, however, is about prioritizing your own life so that your attention becomes a scarce, valuable resource. When you are always the first to reach out, you are inadvertently signaling that you have nothing more important going on than waiting for her response. This lowers the perceived value of your time. By creating emotional gaps, periods where you are focused on your own world, you allow her the space to actually miss you and appreciate the moments when you are present. The key to making this work is ensuring that when you do engage, you make it high impact. Instead of sending dry check-in texts that lead nowhere, your messages should be purposeful, sparking curiosity, sharing a laugh, or offering a unique insight. The real secret, however, is knowing when to leave. You should aim to exit the conversation while the vibe is at its peak, rather than dragging it out until the momentum dies and the spark fizzles. This leaves her with a lingering positive association and an unconscious desire to get back to that high-energy state with you. It creates a psychological craving for your presence because you never overstay your welcome. Crucially, this technique is not a mask you can wear. It has to be backed by your actual lifestyle. If you are sitting on your couch, staring at the clock and timing your replies to look busy, she will eventually sense that underlying desperation. Women are highly intuitive when it comes to social calibration. They can feel the difference between a man who is genuinely occupied with his goals and a man who is pretending to be. Strategic absence only carries weight if you are actually busy building a life, pursuing a career, or mastering a hobby. When your absence is real, your presence feels like a reward, not a routine. Mastering the presence-absence paradox is about creating a powerful contrast in how she experiences you. This is what's known as the range. Many men stay in a middle ground where they are always somewhat available but never fully present, checking their phones during dates or sending distracted texts while working. To become truly unforgettable, you must move to the extremes. When you are apart, you should be a mystery. If she texts you at 9 p.m., you don't need to drop everything to reply. By waiting until you are genuinely free, even if that isn't until the next morning, you signal that you are a man of purpose who isn't tethered to his phone. This silence isn't a tactic to be mean. It's a demonstration of a high-value life that doesn't revolve around seeking instant validation. The magic happens when you flip the switch. The moment you are actually in her physical presence, you must be 100% engaged. This means the phone stays away, the distractions vanish, and you provide a level of intense, focused attention that is rare in the modern world. You listen deeply, hold eye contact, and make her feel like she is the only person in the room. This creates a massive psychological impact because of the contrast. Because you were a mystery while you were apart, your intense focus while together feels like a rare and valuable reward. It makes the time spent with you feel high definition compared to the blurry, distracted interactions she has with everyone else. This combination creates a powerful psychological loop in her mind. When you finally leave, the void created by your absence feels much larger because of how intense your presence was. Her brain will naturally try to bridge that gap by replaying the moments of connection you shared. She starts to wonder what you're doing and when she'll get that focused attention again. By being hard to get, but great to be with, you create a cycle where your absence actually strengthens her attraction, turning a simple interest into a deep, lingering obsession. The disagreement paradox is built on the reality that while constant agreement feels safe, it is rarely exciting. Most men fall into the yes man trap because they are terrified of friction. They believe that by validating every opinion she has, they are making themselves more likable. However, in the world of attraction, total agreement often signals a lack of core identity or a desperate need for approval. When you never push back, you aren't being supportive, you're being predictable. Agreement builds comfort, which is fine for a platonic friendship, but challenge builds chemistry. By having the backbone to calmly disagree, you signal that you are an independent thinker with your own values, an equal who is confident enough to stand his ground rather than a fan who is simply auditioning for her favor. The secret to mastering this paradox is the how. There is a massive difference between being a combative jerk and being a man of conviction. You don't disagree to be right. You disagree to show depth. When you offer a different perspective, you do it with curiosity rather than criticism. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," you might say, "That's an interesting take, but I see it completely differently," and then explain your why. This creates a dynamic intellectual spark that forces her to actually think about who you are. It shatters the nice guy caricature and replaces it with a man of substance. When you challenge her thoughts in a respectful way, you become a source of mental stimulation. She can't just put you in a box and forget about you because you've proven that you can't be easily predicted or manipulated. This creates a level of respect that a yes man will never earn. Because you aren't afraid to lose her by speaking your truth, she begins to value your opinion and your presence far more. This friction creates the heat necessary for attraction. It's the difference between a dull conversation and a fascinating one that she'll find herself replaying in her head long after you've left. The concept of planting future seeds is a psychological method used to build anticipation without the heavy pressure of a formal date request. Most men make the mistake of being too rigid with their plans, forcing a woman to make a yes or no decision on the spot, which can feel like a chore. Future seeds, however, are subtle suggestions that place you in her life weeks or even months down the line. By casually mentioning a hidden hiking trail she would enjoy or a specific book you'll lend her sometime, you are creating a mental bridge to a future where you are still present. You aren't asking for her time yet. You are simply planting the idea that your journey together is far from over. What makes this technique so effective is the vagueness factor. When you suggest a future activity without pinning down a specific day or time, you create an open-ended possibility rather than a scheduled obligation. Because the details aren't finalized, her brain begins to do the work for you. She starts to wonder, when are we going to that spot? Or, did he forget about that book? This uncertainty keeps your image active in her mind during her quiet moments. You aren't just another contact in her phone. You've become a recurring character in her internal narrative. Essentially, you are drawing a mental map where all roads eventually lead back to you. Every time she sees a hiking boot or passes a bookstore, the seed you planted sprouts, reminding her of the conversation you had and the experience she has yet to have with you. This creates a low-pressure way for her to invest in the idea of you. By the time you actually do make a concrete plan, she has already spent hours visualizing it, making her much more likely to say yes and much more excited for the encounter. You've moved from being a guy trying to get on her calendar to being a guy she's been waiting to see. The ultimate filter is the most important mindset shift you can make because it transforms these strategies from tricks into a lifestyle rooted in self-respect. Most men live in fear that if they stop chasing or pull back even slightly, they will lose the woman forever. However, if you step back and she completely disappears, you haven't lost a relationship. You've simply gained the truth. You have filtered out someone who was never genuinely interested or invested in you to begin with. This realization is incredibly powerful because it saves you months of wasted energy, effort, and emotional turmoil chasing someone who was only keeping you around for convenience. By having the courage to create space, you force the reality of the situation to the surface, allowing you to stop being a backup option and start finding someone who actually values your presence. Ultimately, this isn't about manipulating someone into liking you, it's about becoming a man who doesn't need their validation to feel complete. High-value people are naturally drawn to those who have their own direction, goals, and sense of worth. When you focus on your own growth, whether that's hitting the gym, mastering your craft, or expanding your social circle, you naturally maintain a sense of mystery and independence. You stop being a choice she has to weigh against others and start becoming a priority she's afraid to lose. You aren't playing a game, you are simply refusing to play a losing one. The goal of this entire journey isn't just to occupy space in her head at 2 a.m. through psychological triggers. It is to become a man who is actually worth thinking about. When you live a life of purpose, backbone, and focused presence, you don't have to trick people into obsession. Your character does the work for you. By using this filter, you stop chasing the wrong people and start attracting the right ones who are drawn to the man you've become. You transition from a guy who is desperate to be noticed to a man who is impossible to ignore.